Well, it was clear after collecting Power of the Force 2 that waves were being released in a pattern. We were getting one wave for a movie, the next for the next movie, and then for the third movie. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. The first wave was a New Hope wave with just the main characters, followed by the main characters from Empire, and then some Jedi characters with that Shadows of the Empire wave. So we were now back to an Empire wave, because we had just had another A New Hope wave. And Empire tends to be the movie that a lot of fans prefer as the best of all of the Star Wars movies. And whether or not you're going to agree with that, you can probably still say it had some of the best toys. In the vintage era was really when the Star Wars toys started taking off, mostly because they were actually getting reference before the toys came out, as opposed to making up Cantina aliens. So the first wave for Power of the Force 2, as I noted for all the first waves, was featuring all of the main characters, the most iconic ones, the ones that mom and dad and the casual fan might recognize: Boba Fett, Yoda, Lando, that kind of thing. And this was across all of the movies. By the second wave for each movie, we were now going to start digging a little deeper and getting into some character selection. In fact, this wave featured the first Rebel troop builder, if you will. Previously, we'd gotten stormtroopers, and we even had Death Star gunners, TIE fighter pilots, but we hadn't had any Rebel troopers. While he was released later on with a sort of plussed-up incentive freeze-frame action slide, which we all know how much kids love playing with slide projectors. We'll get more into that as the series continues. But for the first release, without his freeze-frame slide, he still came with his two accessories, well, if you count the backpack as one. There seemed to be a rule, the droid figures as the exception, that you always got two accessories.
Always two there are. No more, no less.
And a lot of times these accessories were kind of wonky. Chewbacca came with his bowcaster, but he also came with this giant gun thingy, and same with the stormtroopers, clearly not things we'd seen on screen. The Hoth Trooper just came with his gun, and even the second version of him, while he came with a giant radar dish, still just his gun. So I guess we were done making sure every figure had two blasters. Again, droids aside, R2 and 3PO didn't come with anything. And it was good that the deluxe figures were no longer wonky, but were now being screen accurate. As far as the Hoth Troopers, they were done quite a lot, and even the vintage line had two of them. And even the two that were released in Power of the Force 2 were not the only Hoth Troopers we were ever going to get. The vintage line, while it had two, you could still kind of army build, especially because of all the variants and deco and paint colors that came out in the early 80s. With the modern line, we were going to get Hoth Troopers throughout the line. This was definitely not a one and done, even though at the time we kind of thought this was the only Hoth Trooper we were going to get. It's interesting that it took years, if not decades, before we got the second vintage figure finally made as any figure in the modern line. The one on the right here with the mustache here was the one sort of made in Power of the Force 2 for this first initial release, but it's interesting because he lacked his mustache. Are we actually getting this character? I guess he does, of course, like every background character in Star Wars, have an official name. But technically, we haven't gotten this actual character, Firist, again. And as one of those collectors that's really into getting all of the vintage figures remade in the modern line, come on, Hasbro, we need the mustached Hoth soldier, because he was in the vintage line. He should be in the modern line too. So we've had a lot of Hoth soldiers, but we still have not gotten exactly this guy. What can I say? I'm anal with my collection. All right, let's move from soldiers to droids. I do love the droids. I have a whole shelf just of droids in my office. 2-1B is actually one of my favorites. He is very unique as far as droids because he's got the whole, mouthpiece, because we wouldn't want droids to get a cold when they're, taking care of sick rebels. And much like the other droids, he was going to come with fewer accessories. I mean, I suppose you could have given him Carrie Fisher as a girlfriend accessory, but instead he got this weird kind of wonky medical device that I don't think we ever saw in the movie. So it seemed like this whole rule of two was still applying.
Always two there are. No more, no less.
I don't know. I guess there were other choices they could have given him if they wanted more accessories. But what I'm more interested as far as 2-1B is, I guess, how screen accurate he is. The Power of the Force 2 figure is clearly based on the vintage figure, more so than movie reference, although, again, movie reference is lacking. It's kind of hard to see. The legs, in particular, are where things tend to change. And it's interesting how 2-1B is one of those truly one-and-done figures. We've never gotten another 2-1B, at least from the classic trilogy. For the 30th anniversary, we did get Surgical Droid 2-1B, which looks a little different, especially, again, as far as the legs go, both the knees, the ankles, and even the hip joints are very different for this toy. You can probably see why, because it's clearly the Revenge of the Sith version from when he repaired Anakin, Darth Vader. The few references we get from either, the illustrated guides or especially this one shot from a deleted scene where we can actually see the hip joints on the model used in the movie, it does look more like the vintage toy and the Power of the Force 2 toy. Other times when we see 2-1B droids in animation, or again when we see him in Revenge of the Sith, we tend to really only see him from the waist up. So you can see the difference clearly here, the vintage toy compared to the 30th anniversary version, and how different the legs are. A lot of times when this character is released, he's sometimes just called Medical Droid. And I looked on Wikipedia to try to figure out the difference between the one from Revenge of the Sith and the one from Empire, and they're just labeled as 2-1B. He doesn't get an individual name, so I don't know. I officially give up trying to figure out if this is the same droid or different, if he got legs changed during the rebellion, who knows. All right, let's move on to another figure. So the next one in this wave was the first Hoth Luke, and the first Hoth Luke we had since the vintage days. So really a nice figure. We're still getting a little bit buffed up, but he obviously is wearing a jacket, and we later got an upside-down version packed in with the Wampa in Power of the Force 2. And this would be the first of many kind of redos of this character as the line went. And he would get slimmed down a little bit back towards his actual screen-accurate self, but enough time had not passed since the first wave to this wave that fan feedback could be implemented. It takes about 3 years. So we're still in that window where feedback is listened to, but it can't be activated against. Now, the vintage line had no shortage of Hoth figures between the characters and the Tauntauns. And since I actually never had Hoth Luke as a kid, I always used this Hoth Rebel soldier, the one in the brown vest that we looked at actually earlier, as kind of my stand-in Luke. I actually didn't have Han or Leia in Hoth, but I had both soldiers. Crazy. Now, a little kind of geekiness on my behalf. When this wave hit, I had a lot of trouble finding it, and I actually wound up paying someone in Toys R Us $10 in Jeffrey money to let me have the figure that they'd already taken off the pegs but hadn't bought yet. I basically went up to him and said, I really want that figure. If I give you $10 in Jeffrey money, can I have it to go buy? So I basically, I'm clearly obsessed. I actually paid someone for the right to go buy that figure. That's how excited I was, and that's how addicted I was to these figures. Call me crazy. Maybe you guys have done something similar. Share in the comments below. Let me know. But, I don't exactly have a sports trophy shelf at home. My trophy shelf is full of action figures, and I really wanted this figure because I never had Hoth Luke as a kid. So, I actually double paid for him, or triple paid. All right, rounding out this wave release, we have the AT-ST driver, or Scout Walker, or Chicken Walker. Has quite a few names. Interesting how the AT-AT is at, but this is always AT-ST, not like at-st. Either way, the at-st was released as a toy for the launch of the Power of the Force 2, but we didn't get the driver until this fifth wave. He's a little plain in the sense that he's just wearing a jumpsuit, but that's obviously screen accurate, although it is interesting to wonder exactly what movie this character comes from. Just like the vintage figure, he will fit perfectly into the AT-ST or AT-ST. and can drive it. And this is a vehicle that did appear in Empire Strikes Back, although it's really only in kind of 2 shots, in kind of the distance behind the AT-ATs or AT-ATs. And you can see him there when Luke is on the ground after he crashes his snowspeeder. It's sort of running in the background. But this was enough to get a toy in the vintage line, and you can see the vintage toy is being driven by the AT-AT driver, or AT-AT. I get a lot of slack for not calling it an AT-AT. I called it an AT-AT as a kid. Now, we know the AT-ST, the Scout Trooper, much more from Return of the Jedi, where it was featured in a lot of screen time in the Battle of Endor. And we saw how easy it is to take it out with logs and furry teddy bears. And we've had Scout Walkers released in Return of the Jedi trade dress on package. That made it clearly a Return of the Jedi version, which there actually are differences. The 2 drivers in Return of the Jedi was actually Richard Marquand, the director, and the cinematographer dressed up. They had a little screen cameo. And the vintage figure of the AT-ST driver wasn't released until Return of the Jedi and was released in this look on a Jedi card. We have had very specific Return of the Jedi AT-ST drivers. We've even had Han Solo as an AT-ST driver. I don't know if he put the whole outfit on, but it's interesting that this figure was released in an Empire Strikes Back wave when he's wearing a Return of the Jedi outfit. So I guess everything kind of blends together, but I don't know which movie this guy's supposed to be from. I don't think he was wearing that on Hoth. All right, let's get to the last figure in this wave, Boushh. Now, Boushh is definitely a fan favorite. He's a bounty hunter, he's an alien. We all know that Boba Fett is kind of king of the bounty hunters, quite literally at this point. And of all the bounty hunters, Boushh does come in absolutely as a number 2 as far as merchandising. I have been given the lists. I've worked, I'm working on Star Wars lines. I've seen the list provided by Lucasfilm where they literally list out popularity of characters. They've done lots and lots of testing, and Boushh absolutely comes in number 2 after Boba Fett. It's no wonder that he's been one of the very few aliens done in the Black Series. If you look, there's very, very few. I mean, we've got Chewbacca and Yoda, etc., but aliens aren't that common. They take a lot of tooling, but Boushh is popular enough. Maybe it's because his vintage figure was oh so cute. But the Power of the Force 2 figure kind of pulled back on the cuteness a little bit and made him a little bit more ferocious. We got the teeth, we got the eyes. No, we're not doing that again. So, yes, he came with 2 accessories, and Boushh tends to be one of those figures that people collect just Boushh. I know several people that are just Boushh collectors, and they will get every Boushh released in any form factor, statue, figure, action figure, whatever the scale is. So it's great that we got him so early, especially because it was good to have more villains that weren't just Darth Vader and Boba Fett in the line. I mean, the prequels introduced some new villains and the Disney movies, but, having a villain that's not Darth Vader to battle your rebels is pretty cool. And again, dipping into the secret single behavior of me being a collector, and this is so nerdy, so that one scene of Boushh in Empire, and he gets that one line, Rex Snoodrauth. So my friends and I in high school, we decided that what if Star Wars was just a theatrical play put on by the rebellion after they won, and the actor that was playing Boushh, his name was Rex Snoodrauth, and when he was told he needed to say a line, he just said his name. I know, I'm insane. That was just like something, I don't know why, but we used to talk about that over pizza in high school. Somehow we convinced ourselves that was the alternate reality of Star Wars.